"Grandma, don't wear your red coat today." My grandson's voice was small, almost trembling, as he stood in the doorway that chilly morning. His eyes were wide, filled with the kind of worry that only children feel when they sense danger or trouble before anyone else notices. I smiled gently and brushed back my gray hair, trying to reassure him. "Why not, sweetheart?" I asked softly. "This coat has kept me warm for years. It's my favorite." He looked down, kicking at the floor with his tiny shoes, and whispered, "Please." I paused for a moment, sensing the seriousness in his tone. Life had taught me to pay attention to small signals. After all, I had survived grief, the loss of loved ones, long winters of loneliness, and days when my body felt too weak to move. Each challenge had taught me resilience. My red coat had become more than a piece of clothing. It was my armor, a reminder that I was still here, still alive, and still mattered. Yet, that morning, a tiny pang of unease brushed my heart. Despite my grandson's plea, I decided to wear it. As I walked out into the crisp morning air, the red coat stood out brightly against the gray city buildings and the dull winter sky. Each step was heavy with the aches of my joints, the trembling of my hands, and the weight of my years. Yet, I held my head high. The city around me moved in a blur of indifference, people focused on their phones, their routines, lost in their own worlds. I felt invisible, like many elderly people do, yet something inside urged me to keep going. At the bus stop, a group of teenagers laughed loudly, jostling each other without care. I felt their disregard like a cold gust of wind. Then, a man brushed past me roughly, muttering without apology. My heart quickened, but I reminded myself, "Keep moving. Keep your dignity. You still matter." The red coat wasn't just fabric. It was courage, stitched into every seam. It represented all the times I had chosen to keep going, even when the world seemed harsh and unwelcoming. And on that morning, without realizing it, I was about to face a challenge that would test every ounce of that courage. The bus arrived with its usual squeal and shudder, and I stepped inside, holding the rail tightly as it moved. The vehicle was crowded with people lost in their own worlds, some scrolling on their phones, others staring blankly out the windows. Across from me, a young woman glanced at my red coat, her eyes lingering not with admiration, but with judgment. I looked down, trying to ignore the sting. Years of experience had taught me that people often see the surface, but rarely the depth of a life lived fully. At the next stop, a man boarded. He was tall, his movements sharp, his eyes tense and restless. There was an edge to him that made the bus feel colder, heavier. I gripped the rail tighter, and my grandson's words from that morning echoed in my mind. "Don't wear your red coat today." Suddenly, the bus jerked to a sudden stop, throwing the man off balance. His face twisted with anger, and he began shouting at everyone around him. "Watch where you're going. Move." His voice was harsh, demanding attention. And then, unexpectedly, his gaze fixed on me, on the red coat. "You think you're special?" he snapped, his words sharp as knives. The bus went silent. The air seemed to freeze. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Fear, cold and sharp, crept through me. I felt the vulnerability of age, the way the world sometimes dismisses or targets those who appear weak. For a moment, I felt small, invisible, powerless. But then something remarkable happened. A young man, seated near the back, stood up. Another followed. Even a mother holding her child pulled her little one closer and spoke firmly, asserting that the man's behavior was unacceptable. The aggressor's anger met resistance, and the driver, realizing the tension, intervened, asking the man to leave. Reluctantly, he exited, still muttering under his breath. The young man who had confronted him turned to me and smiled softly. "You're safe now, ma'am," he said. Safe. That word carried more weight than I had realized I needed. For so long, I had walked through life largely unnoticed, surviving in the shadows, thinking my courage or presence mattered little to anyone. Yet in that moment, I understood something profound. The red coat hadn't made me a target, it had made me visible, and visibility is a kind of power we often underestimate. I stepped off the bus at the next stop, my hands still trembling, and sat on a nearby bench to catch my breath. My grandson's words repeated in my mind. Had he sensed danger this morning? Or had he sensed something deeper? Something about courage, about standing tall, even when the world seems indifferent. I realized then that life's lessons come in unexpected forms. Sometimes, courage is not about never feeling fear, it's about stepping forward despite it. Sometimes, bravery isn't measured in grand gestures, but in the quiet decision to show up, to exist fully, to claim your space in a world that often overlooks you. That day, the red coat had done more than keep me warm. It had reminded me of the power within me, the strength I had accumulated over decades of living fully, loving deeply, and surviving fiercely. And in that moment, I promised myself something. No matter how fragile or old I felt, I would never hide again. I would continue to show up, to move forward, and to wear my courage, no matter how visible or bright it appeared to others. When I returned home that afternoon, my grandson ran to me and threw his small arms around me in a tight hug, as if he had been holding his breath all day. His little body trembled slightly, and I felt the weight of worry he had carried since that morning. "You wore it, didn't you?" he asked, his voice small but filled with relief. "Yes, sweetheart," I replied, kneeling to look into his eyes. "And I'm okay." He nodded, but his eyes filled with tears. "At school today," he said, quietly, "we learned about how people sometimes get treated badly just for standing out, for being different. I was scared. I didn't want anything to happen to you." In that moment, I understood something profound. My grandson wasn't afraid of the coat itself. He wasn't afraid of color, fabric, or fashion. He was afraid of the world, the harshness it could show, the cruelty it could hide in plain sight. He was afraid that someone he loved might get hurt simply for being themselves. I held him gently, feeling the lines of worry etched on his young face. "Listen to me, my love," I said. "Life will always try to make you afraid. It will tell you to hide, to blend in, to be quiet. But if you spend your life hiding, you will forget who you are, and the world will never get to see your light." That night, after he went to bed, I sat quietly in the living room, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The events of the day played repeatedly in my mind. How often had I chosen safety over expression? How many dreams had I tucked away, thinking I was too old or it was too late? How many times had I silenced my voice to avoid attention or trouble? Then it hit me. Courage doesn't disappear with age, it only waits for a reason to reemerge. Every challenge, every act of fear, every moment I thought I had nothing left to give it, had all been preparing me for this. The red coat had been more than a garment. It was a symbol of my choices, my experiences, my resilience. Each stitch was a testament to the years I had refused to give up. And that morning, by wearing it despite fear and caution, I had made a declaration. I was visible. I mattered. My life still had meaning. I thought about the young man who had stood up for me on the bus, about the strangers who showed courage alongside me, and about my grandson, who cared deeply even when he was too young to fully understand the world's complexities. Life, I realized, was not just about survival. It was about impact, about showing up for others, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's scary, even when the world seems indifferent. And that realization changed me. It reminded me that bravery is not about being fearless. It's about continuing, even in the face of fear. It's about being seen, being heard, and refusing to disappear quietly into the background. That night, as I folded the red coat carefully and placed it by the door for the next day, I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning. I will not hide. I will continue to stand tall. I will continue to inspire courage, in myself and in others." The next morning, I put on the red coat again, but this time, I wore it differently, not just as a shield against the cold, but as a statement to myself and to the world that I was here, I mattered, and I would no longer hide. As I stepped outside, I walked slower, but with intention. Each movement was deliberate, each step a quiet declaration of resilience. I smiled at strangers, greeted the shopkeepers by name, and helped another elderly woman struggling with her groceries. The city, in all its chaos and indifference, began to feel warmer, not because the streets had changed, but because I had. People noticed not just the coat, but the confidence behind it, the way I held my head high, the way I refused to let fear dictate my actions, the way I chose to exist fully, boldly, and unapologetically. When my grandson saw me before school, he ran up and said, "You look brave today, Grandma." His eyes sparkled with pride and understanding. I hugged him tightly and whispered, "So do you, my love, so do you." That was the moment I realized the true lesson of the red coat. Motivation isn't about being fearless. It isn't about never feeling doubt or worry. Motivation is about moving forward even when fear exists. It's about showing up when the world expects you to hide. It's about standing tall and choosing visibility, even when others try to dim your light. if you're watching this and you feel invisible, if you feel too old, too late, or too small, remember this: your red coat might be your voice, your dream, your truth, or your courage. Whatever it is, wear it boldly. Show up, move forward, speak your truth, step into the world with the strength that has carried you this far. Because the world doesn't change when we hide, it changes when we show up. And every small act of bravery, every time you refuse to disappear quietly, creates ripples, ripples that inspire others to stand up, to be seen, to be brave. Your life matters, your courage matters, your story matters. So wear your red coat, step out, and let the world see the power of your presence.